Okay, so, I guess let me start this off by saying better late than never. This is actually a really old project of mine. This is actually my very first replica build. This is my 1969 Dodge Charger Half-Life 2 Jalopy replica. However, this being my very first one, it's always looked ugly, and I hated it. So, recently, about a month ago, I decided it was a great idea to start all over. Completely over. For the B pillars, these are actually new ones. For the A pillars and roof line, I actually used 1/4-inch copper pipe. So, I never really wanted to record this because I didn't really think it was, like, important, I guess. I guess here's where I'm at right now. The dashboard got completely overhauled. So it now is a little more realistic to the game. Front subframe has been completely rebuilt using 1/8 inch brass tubing. I originally went for styrene, but it was too flexible and I didn't like it, so I went to brass. Seats and all interior has been repainted. Front and rear valences have been repainted, although I want to sand down the bumpers again. Front wheels have been completely overhauled. They have been almost completely scratch built. The tires came from the Datsun 240Z that I used to build the rots in. The wheels here were the original wheels I used for the project. They came from a 25th scale custom 60s Corvette, I don't know what it is. And the rear hubs and suspension A-arms that I plan on using this came from, I don't know what model it is, but it came from a an ATV. For the rear wheels, these came from the I just noticed there's actually a little bit of roadkill on this car. These front hubcaps, I'm going to call them, because that's pretty much what they are now, came from the General Mayhem build that I made. The inner drums here, because this is actually kind of like a 2-piece deal, actually kind of a 3-piece deal. Check this out. The front part you see is actually glued to the tire. The tire is glued to the inner drum, which came out of a 2005 Ford F-250, I think? Something like that. It was a Harley Davidson edition. I didn't really care about it. The inner spacer, as I'm going to be using it, came from... Jeez, where did it come from? I think it came from this car. The original General Lee car that I used to cut it up. Yeah, and the reason I used the General Lee in the first place, because of this push bar. That's pretty much why. I use the General Lee because it's a 69 Charger, it has a push bar, and it has the right steering wheel. So if you're ever thinking about making a Jalopy replica, use a General Lee. I've been making front upper suspension mounts out of, these are actually the old styrene ones. I've been planning on making brass ones now, like this. I'm not done yet, obviously. This is glued together, and yeah. Okay, so since yesterday and a little bit of today, I've went ahead and finished one side of the upper frame / suspension mount, and it was, it's relatively easy. I've been using, for the entire frame plus this, I've been using 1/8 inch square tubing made out of brass. For the measurements, I did, for this, since this is actually going to be holding on to the dashboard, it has to be at an exact length. So, luckily, it's actually a pretty simple length. So this longer piece here is 2 5/8. This piece is 3/4, And this is 5/8. That's pretty simple. Let's go ahead and get that going. 2 and 5/8. Now I like to scribe the lines with an X-Acto knife, and a lot of people think it's gonna dull the blade, and I mean after a long time it will, yeah, of course. But hardened steel is harder than brass, so it's not gonna, you know, dull out anytime soon. So I'm actually just gonna go ahead and scribe it. I'm not gonna cut it off with the X-Acto knife. I'm gonna use the cutoff wheel for the Dremel for that. I'm just gonna be scribing it. Okay, so I went ahead and cut out the long piece and the short piece here that goes to the front like this. So now I'm going to cut out the shorter piece that goes like that. Okay. Okay, so I'm back and glued it in place, and I also put some aluminum tape on the leg of the piston here so that the glue has a better chance of not sticking. And what I've done is actually glued it to the inside here and then glued all this empty space here with super glue. Okay, so for this, I really wanted to get started on the rear axle today. So, a bone stock 69 Charger has a solid rear axle. It has a differential in the middle and two axles that go through a housing out to the wheel bearings. Now in the game, it has an independent rear axle. The rear differential is mounted on some sort of, some sort of plate, it looks like in the game. Right about there. Stock, it would have been like that. Yeah, that's kind of low. The rear end, like I said, the differential is mounted to the actual floor of the car, and then it has independent axles that lead out to the wheels like that. Now, if you ever played Gary's Mod, which, you know, it's pretty much the same game, kind of, if you don't know what it is. It's like the sandbox version of Half-Life. But if you ever pick the car up and drop it back down and all that, you'll notice that the rear end actually moves pretty similar to a Volkswagen, where it just folds out underneath the car. So I plan to replicate that as well. So for starters, we're gonna go ahead and I think cut these off, and then I'm gonna use some more 3mm box tubing for some shock mounts that I plan on using. These shocks, by the way, came from my low-C micro desert truck that is broken. It kind of sucked using parts for a discontinued RC car, but for this project I think it would look nice. Plus, I mean, I can always just buy more parts later. It's discontinued but not rare, so I'm not really too worried about it. This is one of those times where it always makes me nervous, because this is one of those points of no return episodes, you know? So, wish me luck. Alright, plug your ears. Okay, so here's what I got. So I've got some of these 7/8 inch long, 1/8 inch in diameter styrene tubing here, and I've squished one end flat. I don't know if you can tell. And then I went ahead and trimmed down the sides because they like ballooned out when you squish them. So I did that, and then here's my plan. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. See what I mean? So when you drill a hole, it's going to be able to articulate like that. Okay, so since the last time you saw this, I had finished making the the axles. Except I made a decision earlier today to get rid of the styrene axles that I had previously made, and instead use steel, because apparently I have a couple of leftover nails from Stubby Bob. For the shock mounts, like I said I was going to make, these are 1/8 inch by 1/4 inch brass square tubing that I had glued to the bottom of this, and I had filled the entire thing with glue so it's solid, drilled a hole in the center, and I tapped it. So, actually I didn't tap it, I just drilled a hole, put these really tiny screws in, and waited for it to dry, and then I backed the screws out and added threads. As for the bottom of the car, the frame, the old axle mounts, because I don't know if you remember, but on the tops of the axles there were, you know, a couple mounts there, and they would go inside these holes and screw in from the top there. So what I did was put some tape over these, fill the entire thing with glue, and then I sanded them down. I also made a couple of these. These are the top of the shock mounts. So again, these are 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch brass square tubing with a hole drilled all the way through one side, and then sort of a C shape on the other side. I glued that there on the underside of the car and on the back side of the frame, so it can sit there. Then I went ahead and screwed the shock in already, so it's gonna be like that. So my thought was for today, I want to ground down the sides of this, and then drill a hole through it, and then mount it inside the axle. Alright, let's get started. What I've got is, I actually changed my mind on the 1mm. I think that was just too thin. So I went ahead and I'm using 2mm styrene. Anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and get this started in here. Just like that. Get this axle in here. Shove it in. There you go, just like that. Get that off. And there you go. Got the axle. Went from a solid axle to an independent rear axle. I wanted to get started on the frame here. If you remember, this side was the mounting point for the old axle, and so I needed to put a mount for the upper part of the shock. And so to do that, I need to grind this flat and all that, and just make it look pretty. So, kind of want to save the other side for you to watch if you like. So, I'm going to sand down the top of this with a file, and then maybe I'll do the front side with my Dremel. Maybe you can watch that, I don't know. And then I'll do this side for you. Alright? Let's get started. Okay. And finished up with a file just a little bit on both sides, and I think we're ready to glue in them out. So again, here's what I've got. we can go ahead and glue that in, and then we should be able to put the rear suspension kind of in today, which is kind of exciting. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, there we go. So the diff will be about here, give or take, and then, just like that, suspension. Okay, so, it's been about a month since the last time I've let you watch me work on this thing. I got a couple of things done though. I've got this made, kind of, almost done. This is the differential mount that's going to be like this in the car, where this is going to be glued to the bottom of the floor, and this is going to be glued at the top of the differential. So, I did that. It's just a couple of, these shapes here, like that, and then one extra strip of metal that was bent to shape. So, not a whole lot there. I did the, I got the passenger side of the A-arm slash roof line out of brass here, and I still have to make the driver's side, although I'm going to go ahead and let you watch me do that one. So, I guess, yeah, not a whole lot has changed, but I figured I'd go ahead and let you catch up. So, I think for this one I'm going to go ahead and finish the diff hanger. So, yeah. Okay, so, got the part here ready to go. I've got a glass of water off camera to cool this thing off every now and again. So, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I think we're good to go. We're almost done here. I think that's about good. Pretty similar to the other side. Still have to do a little bit more finishing, but looks about right to me. So, yeah. Okay, so for the A-pillars and roof, I'm going to be using, again, some of this brass 1/8 of an inch thick square tubing here. And for the length of it, it's going to be exactly 4 3/4 inch long, like that. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and cut this out and show you how to bend it. Alright? Okay, so we're down here in the garage where the vise is, because I don't want to bring it up to my room, so I'm going to be filming down here in the garage. So I have the piece of brass in the vise along with the styrene template, and what I've done is I've glued the styrene template to the brass one here, and what I've done is I've put in Sharpie these little dots here, and this is where all the bends are. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some pliers here and slowly bend around until it reaches the desired shape, and then when we go back upstairs we're going to go ahead and do some fine-tuning. So not hard, but just something I thought I'd share. So this first bend comes in around here. Okay, so I think I've gotten as far done as I want to for right now for the bending process. I'll go ahead and show you real quick what I'm doing here. So if I put up these two directly next to each other, you can kind of see that the driver's side one sticks out just a little bit further. That it looks like a mistake, I know, but it's actually done on purpose. So I have the 69 Charger grill that's for this car, obviously, and what I used for the headlights originally were a couple of nail heads that I had glued to the back of this with, you know, these cut out, you know. There's two of them, like, per side. There's one here, and then there's one mirrored here. I just cut one of these out and then glued some nail heads in there to make it look like it had the headlights open. But I never really liked the look of it. So for the car I used for the General Mayhem build, the 68 Charger, it had a way more realistic and more cool looking grill. Okay, so the way both the 68, 69, and 70 Chargers worked, where it had these headlight units that turned like that. You know, they're on hinges, right? So you turn on the headlights and go, and they open like that. It's pretty cool.
Turn them on.
And on the back of the 68 one, they actually moved. And so I had a couple of these little, you know, cutouts for hinges and all that, and also the cutouts for, you know, obviously the, you know, headlights themselves. And it would sit in there like that. It would sit in there like that, and you can actually move them and all. So it's just really hard to turn. But yeah, so I kind of want to go ahead and take these headlights and put them in the 69 Charger grill, but make them move like the 68 one. So I think that's my plan for that one. Okay, so If this doesn't work, I have a couple of plastic sheets that I can just go ahead and cut to shape and then glue back in. So I guess there really is no reason to panic. I'm just like, a little nervous. So anyways, let's get started. I have to take it back off soon because it's not spinning right, but yeah, there you go. And then up and close, you can spin that one. And then spin this one. Like that. But yeah, like I said, I do have to take them out, take this one out again because it's not acting right, but yeah. There you go. That's the grill. Okay, so I've got a couple things done since the last time you've seen this. I went ahead and finished painting the grill here. Finished painting all the bumper. Finished painting the headlight, covers themselves, so I can match the rest of the grill. I also went ahead and painted the hinges with just a little bit of rust color, just to make it, look a little more realistic instead of just white. I modified the lights just a little bit more so they can rotate a little easier, but for the most part, that's looking pretty good. I also finished the rear suspension. It still needs to be painted, but for the most part, in terms of construction and all that, it is finished. So, yeah, that's what it looks like when it's at rest. I actually simulated it under weight and put everything on the car, and then put it on like little blocks, and it sits perfectly flat. It couldn't be better. And so, however, it did bottom out the shocks though, so I went ahead and cheated and put just a little shim of like 2mm plastic underneath the differential hanger, so the whole differential can sit down lower, and so that when it bottoms out, it's a lot, higher up, so that it can actually have suspension, If we put one of the wheels kind of on, you can see what I'm talking about here. So, it's going to be sitting about there, okay? So it's just a little too high, in the game. It's a little more like that, you know, but I have it a little more like that. And so, I mean, the more ground clearance the better, because it looks kind of cool, but it is a little disappointing not having it, you know, as realistic as possible to the game. But yeah, I put the A-pillar and roof line of the driver's side in temporarily just to see what it looks like, and I'm thinking that looks pretty cool. I still gotta make those little bars that go down from the little skirt here to the roof bar here, but that's gonna be later, of course. Gotta put the dashboard in. Yeah, it's all looking pretty good. So if we put the dashboard in just temporarily here, you can kind of see what's kind of gonna look like. So yeah, I'm looking at buying a new engine so that it, you know, looks better. This old one here isn't very realistic anymore. I have been looking at this one engine from GMP. It's like a I think it was a 427 Hemi. I wanted a 440, but they didn't have any, so that's what I'll do, is I'll get a whole new engine, and then take out the intake manifold from here, modify it a lot, put it on the new engine, put the new engine here, and all that, and make it fit. But, yeah, like I said, just to show you what I've been up to. It still needs work, you know, I'm still gonna have to, make that look pretty too. But like I said, I just want to throw it in there just for fun, you know, just for giggles, see what it looks like. And it looks pretty good. So, yeah. Okay, so, I told you I was going to get a different engine for this thing, and I did. I also said I was going to get a 427, but I didn't. I went ahead and got this Tommy Evo's replica racing engine, mostly because it has the right valve covers. That's pretty much why. I'm gonna have to obviously take off the supercharger and, you know, blower assembly and all that, and belts and all that stuff like that. It's super cool. You know, the belt moves. The actual throttle linkage for the throttle opens. That's really cool. But sadly, I'm not gonna be able to use any of that. But for the transmission, I'm gonna have to cut this one off. And actually, my thought was to go ahead and cut the cylinders and basically the whole V shape of the old engine off, and then glue this one on, because if you can tell, they're almost exactly the same shape, right? So yeah, I'm thinking I'll go ahead and cut that there and then replace it so that, yeah, does that, and then so that way the old engine and oil pan and transmission, all that, can actually bolt right up to the original spots and all that, and I don't have to make anything new. And like I said, I'm gonna take the blower off of this, take some of these front accessories off, put some of the old ones on from here, like the alternator and the fan. Maybe this fan, I still haven't decided yet. Either this four-spoke fan from the old flathead 4 that I used for Stubby Bob, that came out of Stubby Bob, or this, you know, 8-spoke one. So who knows? But yeah, I figured for today, I'm gonna go ahead and show you me disassembling this engine. All right? Yeah, I want to. Actually, I'm just gonna take the valve covers off with the spark plugs in place because I don't feel like redoing the wiring. Okay, so here we are. Air block, kind of. Haven't taken the heads off yet. But yeah, now I gotta go ahead and take this engine apart. Okay, so I think that's looking pretty good so far. I need to obviously, glue it together and then, you know, level it out and stuff like that. Just make it look pretty in general. But for the most part, I'm thinking that looks pretty good. So, yeah. This is turning out way better than the version I made with Stubby Bob. But yeah, obviously it's not perfect. There's still a little bit of work left to do, but yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera. Okay, so I went ahead and finished mostly the engine and transmission. I went ahead and glued it all together, sanded it down, painted it and everything on it. So yeah, I made a I combined both of the water pump and belts and all that from the new engine and the old flathead Ford that was out of Stubby Bob, and I created this monstrosity. I think it's actually looking pretty good. I scraped some of the paint off of the fan by accident, but I'll put that back on. The alternator from the old water pump assembly, from the old engine, I went ahead and glued that directly where the idler pulley would have been for the supercharger for the new engine, where that would have been, and I think that's looking, pretty hacked together, I put the spark plug wires back in place, painted everything and all that. I'm using the stock exhaust manifolds, except I cut the exhaust pipe off of the, I don't want to say collector, but, the manifold itself there, and re-angled it down at a greater angle because the cylinder heads are at a greater V angle than what the old engine was. So yeah, that's what I'm working on now. I'm also working on the carburetor and the air cleaner lid assembly. The carburetor is looking pretty good. So yeah, that's going to go on top of my custom intake manifold that I'm actually kind of proud of. That is 2 sheets of 2mm plastic glued together and then carved out using a half-inch drum sander. So yeah, finished that up with a file and everything, made it look all good and stuff. So yeah, same thing with the carburetor. I'm making that custom from 2 sheets of 2mm styrene is what it is. And yeah, I went ahead and glued those together, and then I'm still working on it. Right now it's just a bare, block, basically, Still gotta add all the details, like throttle linkages and all that stuff, but I'll do that later. But yeah, it's gonna go there, roughly-ish, and I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. The air cleaner lid itself is exactly 7/8 inch in diameter. Yeah. So that's the engine and transmission mostly done. So I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. To fit it in the frame, because this is the most shoehorn fit I've ever made, I had to make the bottom of the frame here detachable using really tiny screws. Drilled a couple of holes on either side of the frame here on the bottom there, and drilled holes there and all that, so this can come out easier and all that. So that way, that allows me to put the engine in from the bottom, which is a little untraditional, but for this it's gonna have to be that way because it won't fit from the top. So yeah, this is literally the most shoehorn fit engine I've ever made. So yeah, it's still a little stressful trying to shove this in here because I'm scared I'll break the frame again, because I've actually done that like twice before. There we go. Yeah. So yeah, it just barely fits in there, but it looks pretty good. So. The old engine actually stuck up higher than the frame before. This one actually sits a little bit below, which is a little disappointing because in the game, the bottom of the valve cover here is actually just above the frame here. So it's a little bit, you know, not realistic to the game, but I still think it looks pretty good. So yeah, I went ahead and made the whole rear differential and differential mount assembly and all that detachable. So actually drilled a couple of holes in the top of the floor here and into the mount, and made it detachable so that I can paint it later easier. I also went ahead and painted the shock absorbers blue, so that's looking really good. Painted those blue with a little bit of rust color. Wanted to paint the shocks, or I wanted to paint the springs rust, but the paint would stick to it. I thought about painting it brown, but I figured, no, it's not worth it. So I'm also working on the front brakes and front suspension steering knuckles here, just cause I guess. These brake discs and brake caliper there came from, I think, the Ford F-250 that I used for the wheels, I think, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I modified the knuckle because it was the knuckle plus this giant ugly circle. If you remember, like if I ever showed it to you, there's a big ugly circle. I cut that off. I took the brake rotors and cut this drum part of it off, you know, and then just glued it by the rotor, by the caliper to the back of the steering arm here. So that should work just fine. So anyways, that's what I've been doing. I think that'll be it for part 1. It's like 50 minutes-ish right now, which is really long. So I'm going to go ahead and split this into 2 parts, maybe 3, I don't know, depends on how long this is going to take. So yeah, I hope you like it so far, and I hope you'll watch the next part. So anyways, that'll be it for this one. See ya.